Hi everyone, I'm Abdulaziz Al-Ajaji. I'm here to present our work, TripleDARE, Triplet-based Domain Adaptation for Lab-to-Field Human Context Recognition. Working with Professor Emmanuel Agu and Professor Elke Rittensteiner and my teammates Walter, Kevin, Luke, and Hamid. First, we briefly introduce the topic. We focus on Human Context Recognition, HCR, using smartphone sensors, a part of ongoing research project funded by DARPA concerning early detection of ailments through analyzing smartphone sensors. So context can be defined as any information used to characterize the situation of users while they interact with an application. We use smartphones because they can be utilized as passive sensing systems that help in a variety of domains, such as healthcare or security. Since they are ubiquitously owned and users carry them almost always. In our work, we represent context as the tuple, activity, and phone placement. So our HCR classification can be mapped to a multi-label classification problem. Before we talk about our proposed method, we have to briefly discuss the challenges of our problem. For HCRs, there are two types of data collection studies, scripted and in the wild. In scripted studies, users visit context in a pre-planned order and often collected using fixed types of phones and phone placements. While this type of data produces accurate label data, it doesn't capture realistic behavior and thus may not generalize well to real-world applications. On the other hand, we have in the wild studies, which capture realistic behavior as users use their own phones and provide annotations through self-reporting while they live their own daily lives. While in the wild datasets capture realistic behavior, they suffer from missing or wrong labels. Additionally, gathering more human annotated data is so expensive. In our work, we conducted a coincident data study combining both types of datasets where same contexts were collected. So we are researching methods to improve the ability to reuse pre-trained models on scripted dataset and make predictions for data collected in the wild. However, when we try to utilize the reliable labels in the scripted dataset and test them on in the wild dataset, we encounter the issue of covariate shifts, where the input distribution differ significantly between training and testing data. And that can happen in many situations, described by what we called diversity of causes, which include factors like different phone placements or phone types or even different subjects can lead to covariate shifts. For example, different phone placements produce different features for the same activity, which is walking here. Here we provide background information as well as describing prior work. One of the major solutions to mitigate covariate shifts is domain adaptation, and we focus on unsupervised domain adaptation because the majority of the sensor data in our dataset are unlabeled. Formally, our objective is to perform lab-to-field generalization, which involves adapting pre-trained models on scripted data to perform better performance on in-the-wild datasets, as this scenario is more useful for real-world applications. We compared our work to three baselines, two generic DA methods, deep adaptation network, and deep correlation alignment, and also the state-of-the-art DA methods applied on mobile sensing data, which is called HDCNN. The major limitation we find is that all these methods focus on reducing global distribution discrepancy without considering class level alignment. Our solution utilized triplet loss to improve intra-class compactness and inter-class separability. So TripleDARE stands for Triplet-based Domain Adaptation for context recognition, and we use DA methods to mitigate covariate shifts when deploying HCR models in the wild. We are inspired by a recent method that also used triplet loss to mitigate covariate shifts caused by subject variability and applied also on a similar dataset. For our objective, our model takes two datasets, source dataset with labels, a target dataset without labels, and the goal to adapt the pre-trained model on the source data to make predictions on the target data. So using our approach, we can decrease the dependence on the costly human-provided labels. The approach to do that is by using DA techniques to mitigate covariate shifts occurring when we test models across the two datasets. We also test the case for cross-phone placements, tested that in the scripted dataset. So here we provide more details about the proposed architecture. We use a window size of 10 seconds, and we create two views of the same window, handcrafted features and raw sensors. We use MLP for handcrafted features and attention-based CNN for processing the raw data. And at the end, we concatenate the two outputs together in one vector. So TripleDARE has three major components: domain alignment loss for learning domain invariant features, classification loss to maintain task discriminative features, and a joint fusion triplet loss designed to work with multi-labeled data. The triplet loss essentially helps capturing embedding with better interclass compactness and interclass separation, which eventually improves context classification by pulling in examples labeled similarly and pushing away samples with different labels. So we adopt the online triplet mining strategy used in one of the prominent works that use triplet loss for unsupervised representation learning, which is FaceNet. Since the target domain is unlabeled, we construct pseudo-labels for the target domain using pre-trained models on the source domain, which will be further improved during the model training. So in order for the algorithm to work with multi-label data, we propose to use a compatibility score between the two multi-output label vectors, which could be the dot product of the two vectors here. The reason we needed that is when selecting triplets in the case of say binary or multi-class settings, negatives will simply mean an example with different class than the anchor example or the example that we are comparing against. But for multi-labeled data, we needed this notion of similarity. So finally, the goal is to pull samples with high compatibility scores to be close within a margin, and similarly push samples with less compatibility scores. Now we showcase our experimental results. We evaluated our work on our wash coincident datasets where same context collected in both scripted and in the wild setting. We used notations W for in the wild and S for scripted dataset. We performed unsupervised domain adaptation classification where we train on a subset of data and test on a different subset, and then we report the testing F1 or classification scores. On the right side, we show some examples for generating handcrafted features from the raw sensory data, which is a typical procedure for this type of data. So for the results, overall, TripleDARE outperforms state-of-the-art baselines, improving best baseline by 6% and 4% increase in F1 score and accuracy. It also outperforms models with no adaptation by an increase of 44% and 10% in F1 score and accuracy. So our model consistently outperforms state-of-the-art baseline methods on most of the UDA tasks, even when using less annotated samples. And what we mean by UDA here is the unsupervised domain adaptation tasks. So for each column here represent one different experiments. So here, for example, we train on scripted when the phone is in the bag, and then we test on data, scripted data where the phone was placed in hand. Also, to measure the compactness and separation in the obtained representation, we utilize the silhouette score, which measures both properties, and we find our model achieved higher scores in most cases. Finally, to recap, several issues reduced the performance of HCR in the wild, such as diversity of phone placements and phone types, as well as issues with data labeling. Lab-to-field methods train models on scripted datasets and then adapts them for making predictions in the wild. We propose TripleDARE, a deep learning model for mitigating covariate shifts when deploying HCR models in the wild or testing them on a different phone placement that has been trained on. As a future work, we would like to utilize our work in visual representation learning, where we could analyze sensor data on a large scale in an unsupervised way. Thank you for listening.